So you might be thinking, art? Why are we talking about art in a language class? Well, art is an important part of any culture. And there's a lot of deaf created art. So check it out. Why talk about art in an ASL class? Well, the expression of human creativity or art is an important part of all cultures. Art is an important part of deaf culture too. Some deaf artists focus on deafness and ASL while others do not. The DeVia, which is short for Deaf View Image Art, is a movement by deaf artists to express specifically their deaf experience. The movement was started by a group of deaf artists in 1989 at the first Deaf Way Festival. So we're going to look at a few deaf artists and deaf art. The first one is Douglas Tilden. He was a sculptor and he was an internationally recognized artist. Because both art and sign language are visual, Tilden saw them as connected. He didn't do any, deaf specific sculptures like, a hand or, anything like that. But he thought that art was like an extension of his sign language. So this sculpture, the Mechanics, is still standing, and this is a photo of it standing in the aftermath of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake and fire, which is pretty amazing. So here's the Mechanics. Closer up, it's at the intersection of Market Bush and Battery Streets in San Francisco, and you can see it today. Another one of Douglas Tilden's famous sculptures is called Bear Hunt. And this one is actually on the campus of the California School for the Deaf at Fremont. This is not my photo, but I used to work there and I saw it. This is Chuck Baird. He's one of my favorite deaf artists because I love his work. He is a beloved and well-known deaf painter and actor. Among other things, he painted stage sets for the National Theater of the Deaf. And he was the chief creator of DeVia, that movement that I mentioned a minute ago. Here are some of Chuck Baird's pieces. And he uses signs in all of them, which is so cool. This one's colors, which of course, this is the sign for color. So he, created that in his painting and then added the color, which is cool. I like this one too. This is the sign for art. And so he has light coming out of his finger, the person's finger there, as pencils and paint brushes and things are also flying out. This is art number 2 by Chuck Baird. This is one of my favorites. I love this one. This is the sign for whale. And so you can see there, whale in ASL with, all the water dripping off the tail. I love that one. This is a drawing of Matt Daigle. He is a graphic designer, cartoonist, and illustrator of children's books. He has a Bachelor of Arts in Advertising and Graphic Design, and he's won several awards all over the country. He has a comic strip called That Deaf Guy, and he has been in every edition of Sign News. So here are a few of Matt Daigle's, couple of his works. He drew this poster for the Deaf Festival in Kentucky in 2006. And then here is, I'll give you a minute to read it, one of That Deaf Guy. So you can see in the comic, they are signing a little bit, you don't get the movement obviously, but some of the hand shapes and a little bit of the movement in there. Here are a couple more Deaf Guy comics. And one more. All right, this is Betty Miller. She is a very well-known deaf artist who taught art at Gallaudet University, and she helped establish art programs at other schools as well. She is known for her portrayal of the deaf experience in her art, and there are several of her works that I just love. This is one of them. It's called AmSlan Prohibited. So the old term for American Sign Language before it started getting called ASL was AmSlan, AmSlan, right? American Sign Language, right? So this is her portrayal of sign language being prohibited. We have talked a little bit about that in sort of in the early part, mid part of the 1900s, where the theory was, well, I don't know, kind of a lot of the 1900s, but the theory was that if you allow deaf children to sign, then they would never learn to speak. And speaking was looked at as the all important, thing to be able to do, not, language acquisition or anything, but speaking. And so American Sign Language was prohibited in schools quite a bit. So this is her image of that. And I think it speaks volumes. I think it's very impactful. Here's another one of hers. It's called Ba Ba Black Sheep. This is her view of the importance of speaking and how much that was emphasized. And this, I really like this one. This is called Growing in ASL, and it's the progression of the sign for grow. There are several deaf theater groups too. There's the National Theater of the Deaf, which was originally in Connecticut, but has now moved to Washington, D.C. These are a few images from some of their summer camps that they run. And then Deaf West Theater is in LA, and they also put on some amazing performances. There are deaf poets and actors and playwrights and filmmakers and more. Maybe you've seen some. Keep your eyes open for deaf art and for deaf artists, because they're around and they're pretty amazing.